Welcome, family, to our online service. My name is Perseverance, and whether you are watching this locally, globally, internationally, worldly, we are so excited to have you here. So, family, please grab a cup of coffee, a notebook, and your Bible, and enjoy the Word.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome to week 4 of our sermon series on Jesus. My name is Guilliam. I'm the worship pastor here at Every Nation Faith City, and I'm super excited to be sharing with you from God's Word today about Jesus. So, as the name implies from the series, we've been talking about Jesus for the last 4 weeks. And quite honestly, it's actually been really refreshing to just talk about Jesus, who he is and what he's done. The Bible says that when the name of Jesus is lifted, he draws all men and women onto himself. And that's what's happening. As we're talking about Jesus and lifting his name up, he's drawing us to himself. I love this verse in 1 Corinthians 1. It's verse 18 that says, "For the message of God, or for the message about the cross, is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God." You see, the world does not believe that Jesus is more than enough. But to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. To those of us who put our faith in Jesus, we're discovering who Jesus really is and what he has done, and that it is more than enough. The power of God is released in our lives when we just start talking about who Jesus is and what he has done. And so over this past month, the power of God is being released in our church, in our lives, in our marriages, in our finances, in our hearts, and in everything that's happening around us. And God's doing some amazing things because he is more than enough. As we conclude this series, I want to encourage you to stay hungry. So with that, let's pray. Jesus, we love you. We praise you. We need you. Increase our desire to be near to you. Give us eyes to see and ears to hear today. In your name, amen. So at the time of this recording, it's almost exactly 2 months before I get married. And in preparation of this, not the sermon, the marriage, and since my fiance is studying sports coaching, I've decided to lose weight for the wedding. She's not making me do this. I am not being held under duress. I, Guilliam Nel, of sound mind and out of shape body, have decided by my own free will to lose weight. Part of my individualized diet and exercise program, yes, I'm not just doing this like on my own. I didn't just Google something. Actually having some people help me with this. Part of this involves intermittent fasting, where I intentionally, every second day, fast for 23 hours. And this will continue up until the wedding. I'm seeing results, but I'll be honest, I'm miserable. I am not myself when I'm hungry, or at least that's what I tell myself. I lose my temper slightly more. I want to take naps more frequently, which most of the people who know me would say that's not really a change, but whatever. And I have to remind myself to focus more than I usually do. The purpose of the fast, however, and what I'm learning, is not to develop a grudge towards everyone around me. The purpose of the fast, actually, if you must know, is to channel my energy and my hunger in a positive way that benefits me, that grows me, that stretches me, and that actually makes me more myself. Even if, I'll be honest, I'm actually really embarrassed to tell you that I'm adjusting my eating habits and that I'm having to adjust my fitness. In the same way, when it comes to our relationship with God, the purpose of growing in our relationship with God, of getting closer to Jesus, and dropping certain things from our lives that are unhealthy, or that are sin, or that might feel good but aren't good for us. The purpose of dropping those things, of getting into spiritual fast, so to speak, isn't so that we can develop grudges towards the people around us or so that we can be holier than thou. The purpose of this, of discipline, is so that we can channel our energy and our hunger in a positive way that benefits me, that grows me, that stretches me, and makes me more myself, who I was made to be. I want to ask you 3 questions today that you can write down and ask yourself this week, throughout the week. When it comes to my relationship with Jesus, how hungry am I? That's question number 1. One day Jesus was on a road and he was traveling along and he was going to heal this sick little girl. And as he was traveling along, the disciples were there with him. This big crowd was surrounding him. People are talking about Jesus, talking to Jesus, trying to reach out, pressing in from all sides. And off in the distance, there's this woman who's been sick for 12 years. For 12 years, she's had this incurable, embarrassing sickness. And she's done everything that she can to do to get healed. She spent all her money on doctors. She tried every medicine and every option. She's gone to every clinic that you could go to. She's tried everything. But not only has she not gotten healed, she's actually gotten worse. And as she's sitting there and watching Jesus go by, she says to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I can be healed. I will be healed. She says to herself, if I can just touch his robe, if I can just get in contact with Jesus, I will be healed. But for this woman to press into Jesus, it's kind of a big deal because back then she would be considered unclean. Because of her sickness, because of her being unclean, if she actually touches Jesus, she could be stoned to death because it's against the law. This would probably be the equivalent of knowing that you've got like COVID or something that's very catchy and you're intentionally coughing on someone. This would be like that, except slightly worse because you'd be stoned to death. Whereas with COVID, that doesn't usually happen. So here's what I want to say back onto our regularly scheduled program is, but today she didn't care. That day she didn't care. She was so desperate. She was so hungry. She was so relentless for a touch of Jesus that she didn't care about her dignity or even the consequences. This is the first thing I want to say about this is that hunger leads us to desperation. I want to ask you, just to ask yourself today, what does your hunger make you do? What does hunger make me do? For this woman, her hunger drove her to Jesus. What does your hunger make you do? Where are you driven to when you're hungry? How hungry am I? Now back to the story. So this woman's hunger is taking her to this place of life and death, this life and death risk. So she pushes her way through the crowd. She kind of sneaks in and reaches out and grabs just the edge of Jesus' robe. And at the moment she does, it says that power flows from Jesus. Instantly, he heals her, and Jesus stops. Okay, who touched me? The disciples look at Jesus and go, Jesus, what you talking about? There are people all around you currently touching you, and everyone's bumping into you, and you're asking us who touched you. And he says, no. Someone with faith just reached out and touched me. Who was it? And this woman, terrified of what would happen to her, scrapes together her courage and she goes, Lord, it's me. It was me. And the Lord looks at her. Jesus looks at her. He helps her up and he says, take heart, daughter. Your faith has made you well. In other words, he says, you're hungry for the only thing that could heal you. And it did. She was instantly healed. She was healed. Bear with me for a second. It's going to sound strange. But she was healed by hunger in the form of faith. Her hunger drove her to do something about it. Now, a lot of times we think about faith as trust, But sometimes faith comes in the form of hunger. Faith comes in this form of, I have to do something about this. And I have faith that what I want to do right now is actually is actually going to help me. I have faith that when I eat something when I'm hungry, I'm going to be filled. I have faith that when I reach out to Jesus, or she had faith when she reached out to Jesus, that she would be healed. But more than hunger, she had an appetite. I'm going to explain what I mean by that. Now, here's the thing. All of us have these things called appetites. Now, the difference between a hunger and an appetite is the following. Hunger is natural. All of us have it from birth. But appetites are developed. All of us have stronger and weaker appetites. You might enjoy meat more. You might enjoy sweet things more. But the more you indulge an appetite, the more it grows. The less you indulge an appetite, the more it shrinks. Now, regardless of your appetite, though, if you're hungry, your body is hungry. And regardless of your hunger, your appetite can actually override your sense of hunger. Appetites can either increase or decrease my desire to be filled. Now, there are certain things that I eat due to appetite and not due to need. This is why this is why diets are important, because what you're doing is you're actually retraining your appetites. And there are certain things that I need that I don't eat, not because I'm not convinced that I need them, but because of my appetite. Some people they understand the concept that vegetables are good for you. The taste just doesn't match their appetite. And because the taste doesn't match their appetite, they'd rather not eat something that's good for them. I have the same opinion about baby marrows, for instance. But it's something that's good for me, even if my appetite doesn't reflect that. But sometimes what can happen is if we develop appetites that line up with truth, then we're naturally motivated to go and to pursue those things. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes what ends up happening is we feel like our initial appetite is our hunger. The thing that I'm initially attracted to, the thing that I initially feel is the truth. Instead of learning, what is it that I'm actually needing? What keeps me alive? What keeps me growing? And starting from that point, and let that become my appetite. Psalm 34:8 says, "O taste and see that the Lord is good. Happy are those who take refuge in him." Notice how tasting precedes seeing. With some foods, you would never taste it if you saw it first. Or you would never taste it if you knew what it was you were eating. But in order to develop an appetite, you need to taste, and then you will see. So the second question I want us to ask ourselves this week is, what appetites am I developing? For this woman, she had an appetite to see breakthrough, which led her to take a risk, a big risk, a potentially life-ending risk. But the payoff would be life-saving. Our appetites and our hungers, this is important to know, can sometimes guide or misguide us. Now, if you're listening today and you know in your heart, or you feel like you're being controlled by unhealthy passions, I want you to know this: appetites can change. You are not your appetites, but your appetites can affect who you become, which is why it's so important for us to lean on Jesus, to reach out to him, and to let him become our appetite. My third question for you today is this: what are you feeding yourself? In the story of the woman with the issue of blood, she literally took hold of Jesus' robe. Now, if you look back then in the historical context, one thing that you'll notice is that the type of robes that rabbis would wear, that religious teachers and that Jesus himself would wear, would have these little tassels, those things on curtains, little ropey thingies, would be on the bottom or just attached to their cloaks or to their robes. And each of these little tassels that were attached to the robe represented promises. So as people were praying, they would go and they would hold on to these little tassels and they would thank God for specific promises. And these tassels would be reminders of God's promises. So when she grabbed on Jesus' robe, she probably got a hold of one of these little tassels. And to an extent, whether she was realizing it or not, she was holding on to a promise. She was holding on to a promise of God's goodness. I know that God is good. I know that he can heal. I know that Jesus can heal. If I reach out to him, if I hold on to him, maybe I'll be healed. Or in her case, she just said, I'll be healed. What promises are you holding on to today? What promises am I holding on to? Or rather, what are you feeding yourself? In the eating plan, which I love greatly, the doctor and the dietitians who worked out the plan told all of us who are participating in said plan to get rid of fake friends. Now, fake friends are foods that seem or feel healthy but really aren't. Now, these might be foods that we might enjoy or that we have developed an appetite for, that we need to forget about. When it comes to our hunger and our appetites and our relationship with God, there can be some fake friends. Friends that feel or seem to be good, but they really aren't. Like comfort, which sometimes feels like peace, but it really isn't peace. It's just complacency. Or like lust, which feels like intimacy or love, but only for a split second until it mutates into loneliness and depression. Fake friends feel good at first, but we're actually allergic to them. Now, God is telling us to cut them out. And God telling us to cut them out isn't for his ego, it's for our survival. So how do you get rid of these fake friends? You don't do it by memorizing them or by turning your attention to them. You get rid of fake friends by changing what you focus on. One of the things they tell us in the eating plan is not to say, I can only eat X, Y, and Z. We say, I get to eat X, Y, and Z. I don't say, oh, I don't get to lust anymore. I get to say that I get to love. I get to experience good challenges. I get to experience self-control. I get to say no to things that would control me. I get to say no to appetites that are unhealthy for me. I get to not just avoid allergies, but go towards things that keep me filled, that keep me healthy, and that are actually increasing my quality of life. There were lots of things that this woman could have held on. She could have held on to her pain. She could have held on to her sickness. She could have held on to her bitterness or her grief, which would have grown and festered. These fake friends could have held her captive. But instead, she decided to focus on Jesus and touch his robe. We can choose what we hold on to. Am I holding on to fake friends today? Or am I holding on to the finished work of Jesus Christ on the cross? This lady had a moment to interact with Jesus. Only time in her life she would interact with Jesus. We have time. But she went forward, she pushed through the crowd, and she took a hold of the tassels that represented God's promises. Now, back then, the promises were only promises, but today these promises are fulfilled. By Jesus' stripes, we are healed. We are forgiven. We're declared free. When we grab a hold of his robe, we hold on to the finished work of Jesus on the cross of Calvary. Our desires and our appetites begin to change when we hold on to the finished work of Jesus on the cross. Like 1 Corinthians 1 verse 18 says, though, for the message about the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. The world does not believe that Jesus is more than enough, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. In the same way that a diet or a change of lifestyle seems ridiculous to some people. Sometimes even yourself, if you're going on this journey. Sometimes these plans don't feel like they make sense. But they can literally, in some cases, be the difference between life and death. and they can turn your life around. As I close, I just want to repeat this again and say that to those of us who have put our faith in Jesus, we're discovering that who Jesus is and what he has done is actually more than enough. And the power of God is released in our lives when we just start talking about who he is and what he's done, and we hold on to his promises. Will you hold on to his promises today? As I close, I just want to repeat the questions. How hungry am I? What appetites am I developing? And what am I feeding myself? The purpose of the fast is not to develop a grudge towards everyone around me. The purpose of the fast is to channel my energy and my hunger in a positive way that benefits me, that grows me, that stretches me, and makes me more myself as I get to know God and as I grow in relationship with him. If you don't have a relationship with Jesus and you would like to have a relationship, if you'd like to hold on to his promises today, I want to ask you to pray after me. Jesus, I need you. Come into my life. Transform me from the inside out. I repent of my sin, but I choose to let go and to hold on to you instead. Thank you that you died for me on the cross, that you fully paid my ransom. Thank you that you rose from the grave and that now you are seated on the right hand of the Father, and that I have complete freedom in you, and that because of you, my life will never be the same.
Family, thank you so much for joining us. And hey, if you are watching from a different country, please drop your nation in the comment section. We would love to say hello all the way from South Africa. So family, we want to take a moment to say thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you for partnering and sowing with us in this ministry. So if you would love to give, the details are currently on the screen. If you would love to know more about our spiritual family, get in contact with us. If you need prayer, please contact us. And last but not least, here's an opportunity to be a digital evangelist. Please take a moment to share this word with a friend and a family member that you know it will encourage. Last but not least, thank you so much for joining us. I cannot wait to see you again next time.